There was a hair care company, I think it's called Monat. Is that all? You know anything about that?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe hair dye. I don't know. It's like a. Do you know she did like an auto order through that company, had stuff delivered?
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Once again, I'm dealing with your best questions, and this was really a great one from a user called Rossini55, and she said, I think on the previous video, she said, minor question. It was mentioned in the video that Shan'ann's last activity on her mobile phone was at 1:48 a.m. when the phone talked to the doorbell camera. However, I'd heard elsewhere that she had ordered some hair care products on her phone when she got home. Is that wrong? Or was that Chris trying to stage the scene? Or was the ordering of the hair care products done on a different device, such as an iPad? It's a really good question, and it's a good question for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is when you go to the phone data review, in spite of what Detective Baumhover says, there is, well, I guess reinforcing what Detective Baumhover says is there's nothing in the phone data review that is referencing this auto order from the phone data review. And I've placed a screen grab on screen so you can see that there is nothing there. And of course, Detective Baumhover in his report said the same thing, that there was no further activity on Shan'ann's phone. So how do we account for this discrepancy? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So there are a couple of things I want to just go through before I answer the question. First of all, I'll be doing a live on Sunday. I was going to do it on the very controversial subject of gun control. To be honest, I'm just not up for it in terms of my emotions, my mood. I've had quite a difficult week. I've also been dealing with quite a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it attacks or arguments, lots of questions and so on. I don't know, it's just been quite a strange week in that sense. And so instead I'm going to go into the relatively safe and easy area. I'm going to talk about a blog post I put up on Crime Rocket on October the 14th, before the discovery came out, along the subject, what gave the cops their most important clue against Chris Watts, leading him to confess to murder. In other words, the case that I was trying to make in this blog post was that, why did he confess? Well, I was basically saying because he had to. And we're going to look at that particular blog post and the narrative that resulted from it. I also want to quickly make a note of someone else on YouTube that is talking about something along those lines. You know, why did Chris Watts plead guilty, right? And I think what he's trying to, or the discussion that he's having is, why did he suddenly plead guilty, as in now? You know, why did Chris Watts suddenly plead guilty? I find it just a kind of a strange concept, because, you know, he essentially pled guilty on the Wednesday. He committed the crime on the Monday, and he essentially pled guilty to part of it on the Wednesday, and within about 2 weeks a plea deal was in the offing. And then a couple of months later he pled guilty again in court. That was November the 6th, and then again on November the 19th he he was in court when they were talking about what he did, and he didn't say anything. And then again on February the 18th, he basically pled guilty to the whole thing. So the whole sort of idea that he suddenly has pled guilty now in 2021 is, I don't know, I find it quite ridiculous. How many times has he pled guilty? And the other thing that I think pours cold water onto all of these speculations is, if there was an accessory, why has he pled guilty again? Why is he giving up? Why is he giving up on the 35C if there's no one else to pin it on? Surely if there was something like that going on, he would be, there would be no reason to throw in the towel. Of course, the converse of it is, if it was only him and there's no way out of it, then of course he's going to give up, because he's got no case. Now, coming back to the quote-unquote minor question from Rossini55, and I really appreciate the question. No question is really minor. But what I really appreciated from this particular user was when I wanted to find information on it. So I thought that some YouTuber would have discussed it. I thought that it would be blogged somewhere. I thought that it would be referred to somewhere. And I tried a couple of searches, Monat, bounced order. I even did searches through not only the 1,960 pages of discovery, but also the CBI report. And the interesting thing is, it's not really referenced in either of them. Certainly not if you doing targeted searches. This doesn't seem to come up. And as I say, it's missing from the phone data review as well. Now, the issue is definitely something that is kind of a potential problem. Is it appears that somebody was awake at 2:51 in the morning. And I remember very early on, in the very early days, thinking that that particular order suggested that, personally, what I thought was going on was that Chris Watts was awake, and Chris Watts had already murdered Shan'ann at this point, and what he wanted to do was make a purchase that would look like it was her making the purchase in order to test whether a particular credit card still had any money on it. That was what I theorized, incorrectly as it turned out. In any event, what I found very astonishing just on this particular question was I tried to find some information where someone had spoken about it, and there was virtually nothing. And I'm a little bit embarrassed that even Crime Rocket didn't really touch on it on any detail. And so I thought it was about time that someone provided clarity and dedicated an episode like I am here to this particular subject. So in a moment I'm going to play you the pertinent part where Detective Bormover is at the prison Dodge Correctional, and he's speaking to Chris Watts about this. And if I recall, it is right at the end of their session. It is with about 40 minutes remaining of their around about 4-hour interrogation, right? So it was right at the end that he was trying to clear up a couple of things. And so Bormover asked him about this particular thing. Before we get to that, let me just explain a couple of things. So first of all, it was an auto order for hair products or hair dye that went off from Monat at 2:51 that morning, and that purchase was declined, right? And I think it was based on that Bormover made the point in the arrest affidavit that he said it was obvious that the couple were living beyond their means. I think he made that point based on that particular aspect. I think he also made it based on his knowledge of what Chris Watts did for a living, and possibly what he thought that Shan'ann did for a living, selling these powders and whatnot, powders and pills. And so he looked at the size of the house, and he looked at what was going on, and you know, the couple basically only owned one vehicle, and he looked at this really big house and the 2 children and the pregnancy, and he intuitively knew that the couple were living beyond their means, right? And if anything was the sort of red light, the red flag, that was basically, you know, if you wanted to thin slice this whole case, that declined transaction for that order, showing that the credit card was bouncing and that there wasn't any money in the account, that was a sign of a much wider, deeper and greater malaise. It was just a small symptom of the scale and the scope of the looming bankruptcy that the Watts family were facing, not for the first time, for the second time, right? And I think possibly also Bormover would have assumed from Watts saying that, you know, the conversation they had that morning was that they wanted to downsize, they wanted to move to a smaller house in Brighton, that was also an acknowledgement that their financial affairs were not good, that they were struggling financially. Now, if you imagine that the credit card purchase at Lazy Dog sent a notification to Shan'ann's phone, wouldn't you think that Shan'ann would also have received a text notification of this particular purchase being declined? In other words, that her bank or that her, the credit card would kind of notify her of this transaction. Now, on the one hand, I think that it makes sense to think about it that way. On the other hand, as I say, the phone data review doesn't record this activity. I think something else the phone data review doesn't record is that credit card receipt from Chris Watts. It's not in the phone data review either. And so, one's got to wonder what to make of this, because the phone data review does record at 21:12, Shan'ann starts searching Google for the score of the Rockies game. What time does the Rocky game end? At 2200 hours, Watts texts Jeremy that he'd be home in 20 minutes. That's the sort of detail that's in there. This was Saturday night. At 22:04, having concluded their evening tryst, Kessinger then searched the internet on topics like Chris Watts, Shan'ann Watts, Ronnie Watts, and 2825 Saratoga Trail, possibly checking that the house is up for sale or something like that. And then at 22:15, Shan'ann called Watts and held a 3-minute conversation. Still on that topic, 4 minutes later, Shan'ann searched Google and the internet for Lazy Dog menu, Lazy Dog restaurant, and the bar, find a location. And what is emphasized in the phone data review is, she says, how she came to learn so quickly of Watts' dinner expense is not reflected in the phone, but I suspect an alert from their bank or credit company. And so it's something to ponder. He doesn't find the alert on the phone, and why is that? Is it because Chris Watts deleted it? Did he delete it from the cloud? Why isn't it on Shan'ann's phone? Wouldn't it have been a text message? And if it was, why isn't it there? Then there's another entry at 22:28. Watts called Shan'ann and held a 3-minute conversation. So after she called him, he called her back. And then immediately after that conversation, she sent Watts a message saying, "Oh, save your receipt so we can write it off." And I don't think that was incidental. I think she wanted him to save that receipt, probably for some other reason, perhaps to call the restaurant or to check up in some way, and or perhaps even as some kind of proof that it was a receipt from a restaurant. I don't know. But basically she wanted to nail him on that particular thing. And of course he was cheating on her. He was eating at a restaurant. He was there with his mistress. And he had been caught out. And so if you take this as an analogy for the Monat purchase, one wonders what is going on there. Would that have been a text to her phone, or would it have been some sort of message to her computer, to her email? And I can tell you, I have certain banking information that I get emailed to me, and only emailed to me, and I get certain information about transactions that are, I guess, duplicated in text messages. And I think we all know that there are certain instances where it's in one place but not the other. Sometimes it's in both places, and sometimes it's in the other place rather than where I guess you'd expect it. So I do think this is a very interesting question. It would be nice to know where they found this. Did they find it in the browser history? Did they find it in credit card receipts, which I somehow doubt? It's difficult to know. I do think they did access Shan'ann's laptop, and it's possible that is where they found the information. It's just one of those things that isn't completely clear. I do want to emphasize that the phone data review isn't 100% comprehensive. The reviewer left out messages and information that he deemed irrelevant, but it's hard to imagine that at such a critical time, he he'd not mentioned this particular transaction. I firmly believe he doesn't mention it because it's not there. And it's either not there because it was emailed, or it was sent and Chris Watts deleted it because he did have access to her phone. And because this was some information that was quite critical, and if her phone was still on at that point, it would be very important to access it and start to delete messages, I guess. The other thing that I think is important to note with the phone data review is that when at face value, the 111-minute call from Nicole Kessinger to Chris Watts isn't in the phone data review, right? It is extremely important, it's an extremely critical aspect on the timeline and simply not there. Apologies, I've just gone to my own blog post on Crime Rocket just to check this information, and yeah, it was actually Kessinger that received a call from Chris Watts, and I think that makes quite a big difference. It's a big difference if she called him at 21:28 on Sunday night, August 12th, or if he called her. And as it turned out, he called her, and they spoke for 1 hour, 51 minutes, and the conversation ended at 23:19, around the time Shan'ann was supposed to have arrived home from her flight, had it not been delayed. And of course, I think he knew this, and I think he knew what the best time was to call her, and also the best time to end the call. Think about it also from Kessinger's perspective. She's calling Chris Watts at his home. She's probably assuming the kids are alive. Well, she wouldn't be even thinking that, but that the kids would be asleep. She wouldn't know when would be the best time to call, but he would know. He would know when they were taken care of, and he would also know when it would be not safe to talk. And so more than likely he managed that entire conversation, the beginning and the end, right? But the critical point to point out here is that this crucial call at a crucial time to a crucial person doesn't appear in the discovery documents timeline whatsoever. It's not recorded in the timeline. And you can speculate, has it been purposefully left out? Given the amount of information, it just seems very odd that it's not there. It isn't in the discovery phone data review timeline, but of course you do find it in Kessinger's call logs elsewhere in the well, not the phone data review, but elsewhere in the discovery. So it's not missing from the discovery, but it is something you've got to extrapolate. And I'm not sure whether Weld County just forgot to add it in, or whether they assumed armchair sleuths would not put two and two together. One wonders what they assumed. And so I just want to compare that missing 111-minute call to, well, not 111-minute call to this missing Monat transaction. I don't think it's the same thing. I don't think it was selectively left out of it. It is possible that Chris Watts deleted it, but I really don't think it was left out in the same way that the Kessinger call may have been left out. I do think it's a bit of a storm in a teacup. I think there were a lot of people who said that Shan'ann did go to bed that night because she was even on her phone at 2:51 that morning, and I think this sent a lot of people down the wrong sort of rabbit hole. As I say, I thought that Chris Watts, I thought that he was behind it, and that wasn't true. Some people thought Shan'ann was behind it, and it turned out that kind of the boring alternative was what was going on, was that it was an auto ship. And I think a lot of us have those sort of transactions set up, and these tend to be kind of under the radar. And so, and this is a possibility that I'm speculating on. I can't prove it, and I accept that it's quite a cynical view, but I wonder whether the company didn't purposefully set their auto order at an ungodly time on a Monday. Just think about it. 9 minutes to 3 on a Monday morning, so that the consumer wouldn't really notice it. So, if these shipments are taking place on a Monday morning, it's the busiest time, really, on one of the busiest days. It's not as though it's on a weekend. And, you usually want to get your sleep on a Monday night, right? And the other thing is, if you want to cancel something like that, if it's at the middle of the morning or middle of the afternoon, and you get an alert and it's very clear, it's also very easy to cancel a thing like that. But if it's going off when you're asleep at a time like this, isn't it something that is going to slip under the radar kind of thing? So I don't know. I think people who have these transactions might know. They might also set them at certain times. I mean, some of us set our computers to do auto maintenance. Some of our phones are set to do the same thing, and so it might have been set by Shan'ann at that time. It just seems odd. It just seems odd in terms of the timing of the case. I mean, it was literally an hour and 3 minutes after Shan'ann arrived home, and that is why it stood out. So I do find it unlikely that the company would want to irritate the client. In other words, where you literally have an alert going off, wow, I've had this transaction is into my account, and be woken up at just before 3 o'clock in the morning on a Monday. Even if you wanted the product, you would probably delete you wouldn't continue to repeat the transaction because you wouldn't want to be woken up at that time, right? So, that's just my opinion, that you wouldn't want to awaken them, and so more than likely this auto purchase was silent, if I can put it that way. I'd consider that the information was delivered to and perhaps recovered from Shan'ann's laptop or iPad, and we know that on Tuesday night, Chris Watts gave the login and password information to Agent Coder, and apparently that laptop was in Shan'ann's office. I think it was in a bag, and so you would assume that she would do some banking on that. Who knows? So I do think that there's quite a strong possibility that information was emailed. If there's anyone listening to this episode that makes use of this, it would be good to know whether you get your auto ship receipts emailed to you or whether they are sent to your phone. Of course, a lot of phones these days provide notifications of emails as well, right? In this case, it's hard to imagine a billing failure not triggering an SMS, but I guess it's possible. And of course, a lot of people also turn off their phones or put their phones on silent. But I think you've got to consider a scenario where would a banking app want to alert you to transactions in the middle of the night? What do you guys think? There is something to me that is a little bit sinister. I'm not saying that it has anything to do with the crime explicitly, but it has something to do with the way that, in my view, multi-level marketing was eating at the finances of the Watts family. And this is an example of it. These little transactions going on in the middle of the night, just taking small amounts of money out of the account. And you might say, well, that was exactly what Shan'ann wanted and she'd authorized it. But what about Chris Watts? Did he know about it? How did he feel about it? How did he feel about these things going on? And you've got to wonder, where did these products go? What was the cycle of them? And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these products ended up in the family basement, that they would be ordered and they would be shipped and it would all be automatic, and over time they piled up in the basement. And then there was this difficulty of selling them, and when you couldn't sell them, what do you have to do? Well, you've got to sell your house. You've basically spent the money on paying for your house, paying for these products, these overpriced products. And if you think that's an outlandish statement to make, that is exactly the scenario that is presented in I think it's called On Becoming a God in, is it Central California, Central Florida or something like that. You know, that excellent series. That in that series you also have a scenario where they lose their home, and then the wife finds this incredible amount of boxes full of product, unsold product, and then she wryly observes, this is our house, kind of thing. So I'm going to play out with Detective Baumhover asking Chris Watts his question about this particular product, and I hope this episode has made it absolutely clear what this is all about.
There was a hair care company, I think it's called Monat. Is that the bell? You know anything about that? Mm-hmm. Like maybe hair dye. I don't know. Looks like a. Do you know if she did like an auto order through that company and had stuff delivered for hair, any kind of hair care product or hair care dye?
Not something. I mean, she had like little. I know there's something like a little gift pack she had delivered once every month or once every 2 months. Had like a different array of different products in it.
Don't remember where it's from. Okay.
No. Like we said, Monat.
Monat. Monat.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Ring a bell.
Okay. There was an order that was made, like $251. That's why I asked if it was like an auto order type thing.
It might have been an auto order.
Yeah.
It might have been something that I know that Nichol Atkinson, she's into all that stuff. Maybe Shan'ann got her. Maybe Shan'ann got her something, or maybe it was something she recommended.
Okay. How about the HOA thing? What happened there?
She was mailing to the wrong address. They changed her address, and she mailed to the wrong address for a year. And then we got a letter in the mail where we getting like sued over it. We had to pay our HOAs for a year. So we had to pay double for either a whole year or a couple months. That sucked.
What happened to all the money that she sent to the wrong address?
Don't know. I don't know. They said they wouldn't credit it or anything. I'm not even sure what the address was. She said it was just something that she didn't see. I was like, well, I wasn't gonna harp her about it because she did so much. So I was like, I'm not gonna like say what the heck are you doing? No, I'm just
sure.
Don't need that to go up. I know she felt bad enough.
So I'm not going to take it any further than that. Just to wrap up, for those on Patreon or those who want to join Patreon, there are a couple of series. One of them is The Ripper. It's approximately an hour per episode, just dealing with Peter Sutcliffe's own statements. So basically a confession, but it sort of goes on and on, covering a dozen victims in a lot of detail. Also, there were one or two people who survived and put up photo kits or whatever, photo identifiers, photo IDs. And so there, I think, already 6 episodes on the Ripper series. And then there's also a series on Laurie Vallow. I think we're up to around about 10 episodes. And then there are 2 audiobooks that are going up, that are being uploaded right now on the $10 tier. The one is The Craven Silence 2, where we're up to, I think, chapter 6. And the Murder Most Foul narrative dealing with Patrick Frazee, 10 chapters are up there. And so around about a chapter is uploaded every day until the audiobook is complete. Obviously, I do put up a lot of other content besides that, just covering high-profile news on a day-to-day basis. And of course, recently we've been talking a little bit about the Boulder shooting, and we even have a patron that is located in Boulder who went to the vigil. We've got another patron that is located in the Sandwich area in the UK, and that is the area where they've been searching for clues in the Sarah Everard case. So it's quite an interesting community of people interested in true crime on the Patreon channel. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested. as I say, look out for the live stream on Sunday, where I'll be talking about what gave the cops their most important clue against Chris Watts, leading him to confess to murder. Basically, why did he confess? And what I'm trying to make the argument there is that because he had to. He confessed because he felt he had to. And we're going to deal with that in the live stream on Sunday. That's at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'll see you guys then.